Hey everyone, this is Kharissa and welcome to Heart to Heart. We are on part 2 of our webisode series, Loving Yourself, and we're talking about Gideon. This week we're going to do Judges chapter 6. I was going to do 7 as well, but there's so much information I had to split them up. So I'm going to begin talking about Judges 6, and basically what happens is that the Israelites really disobeyed God, and God had punished them for 7 years, and they became under the control of the Midianites. And the Midianites did things like steal their crops, they trampled their crops, they ran rampant around town, and they impoverished the Israelites, took their food, left them nothing. And the Israelites was like, God, basically we need you, help us to get out of the situation. So an angel ends up coming and goes to this young man named Gideon, and I'm actually going to read verses 12 to 16 in Judges chapter 6. I'm in the New International Version, so you can just read along, or you can listen. So basically it says, "When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, 'The Lord is with you, mighty warrior.' 'Pardon me, my lord,' Gideon replied, 'but if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our ancestors told us about when they said, "Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt?" But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian.' The Lord turned to him and said, 'Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?' 'Pardon me, my lord,' Gideon replied, 'but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family.' The Lord answered, 'I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites, leaving none alive.'" Ooh, okay. So there are 5 things that I absolutely love about this passage. And the first one is that I really love how when the angel came down, he just automatically said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." He addressed Gideon in the characteristic of who God had created him, and he already knew that Gideon was a mighty warrior. It's like foreshadowing, like he's telling Gideon, like, "Oh, mighty warrior, yeah, that's you." And Gideon's just like, "Me? Like, no." I just felt like that was just super interesting that the angel just automatically, he didn't say, "Hey, Gideon," he said, "Hey, mighty warrior," letting him know who he is. And the second thing I really love is Gideon does something that I think we all do when we get into situations that get really tough. We automatically start to blame God for stuff. So Gideon just goes on and he's like, "Well, where's all the wonders and all these things that God promised us? And, what's going on?" He's automatically basically kind of like downplaying like God's goodness and God's mercy and God's faithfulness. He's like, "Well, these bad things are happening, so where's God now?" You know what I'm saying? And I think that we all do that when we get into situations. We kind of like start questioning God, and we're like, "What are you doing?" So I thought that that's pretty relatable. I know I do that. I'm not even gonna front. Sometimes I'll be like, "God, what's happening?" The third thing that I felt was really interesting was when the Lord told him, "Go in the strength that you have." And I think that that's pretty important, because sometimes for us, we might feel like we're down for the count, like we're like TKO, like knocked out. And, sometimes you feel like life is just really over, but it's not. And, I think there's a mighty warrior within all of us that has this ability to really fight back in the circumstances and in the situations that we're in. But the only thing that we have to do is we have to be able to endure it. We have to be able to face it head on and actually go through whatever it is that we are going through. The fourth thing that I really love about this passage is I love how Gideon begins to use his societal labels to dictate who he is. So automatically God's like, "Yeah, mighty warrior," and they're calling him all these great things and telling him that he could save Israel. And Gideon's like, "Hold on, I'm the weakest person, I'm in the weakest clan in Manasseh, and I'm the youngest in my family. I don't think you want me." He starts automatically saying, who society has dictated him to be. But number 5, the best thing I love is that God says, "I will be with you." And I think that that's really important, because God's like, "Listen, I know who you are. I know that you're in the weakest clan in Manasseh. I know that you're youngest in your family. But the thing is that I'm going to be with you. So you don't have to do this alone." And I think that that's very important for us to understand, is that when we're going through things that we're going through, hard times, whatever the case may be, that you're not by yourself. It may feel that way because you might not necessarily have people with you, but you do have God with you. And honestly, he's the most faithful person that I know. So, you know, he will never want you to go on a journey without him, because honestly, if you leave God behind, like, you're never gonna succeed. So a couple other things that I really liked, in verses 17 to 22, and also in verses 36 to 40, I really like how Gideon's like asking God to like perform like little miracles for him. And he's like, listen, if this is supposed to happen, like, do weird things for me, like, he put a fleece down for God, and he's like, make, you know, the fleece have dew on it but not the ground. And then he tells God to do the opposite, and he's like, you know, if you are who you say you are, and if this is really gonna happen, then please show me this. And I think that that's pretty interesting, because it really shows like his relationship with God. And it's like, you know, God had said to him, I will be with you. And I think Gideon really wanted to know that God was really there, and that God was the one that he was actually really talking to. I think Gideon wanted to affirm God's promise and know that, you know, if God said that Gideon is who he says that he was, then that's who Gideon was. And I think for him, it was just a shock to his system, and he couldn't necessarily believe it. And also with this, I feel like sometimes we get so comfortable in our labels that, you know, when someone tells us something good about ourselves, that we just can't really believe it, because we're like, no, like, that's not me. For so long, you spend so much time thinking that you are someone that you're not. You know, it's hard to really like come out of you know, that label of, oh, I'm stupid, or oh, I'm too skinny, or I'm too fat, or, you know, whatever the case may be. But I declare today that you're going to come out of your circumstance, and that you're going to walk in the characteristic and in the persona that God has placed for your life, and not who society has deemed you to be. Okay. And also in verses 24 to 32, Gideon builds a temple for God, and God tells him, hey, you know, build something else. Take down the temple for Baal, who's like some god that they were worshiping that they shouldn't have been worshiping. And he's like, take down that temple and build up a temple for me. And Gideon does it at night instead of during the day, because he felt kind of afraid like to do it in front of people. So he ends up doing it at night, and then the next day the town just goes wild. They're pissed off. Everybody's upset. But I think that that's pretty like important, because, you know, there are going to be times that God's going to ask you to do things that is going to make you completely uncomfortable. And whether or not, if you feel afraid, if you feel fear, if you feel scared, if you feel sad, if you feel upset about whatever God's asking you to do, I say do it. You know, God told Gideon before, go in the strength that you have. I gave you strength to really overcome this issue. And Gideon did, you know, even though he was feeling some type of way about whatever God had asked him to do, he still pushed on and he did it. Also, it kind of shows like, you know, society told you that you were one way. When you start to go against what society tells you, they'll start to turn your back on you. And things that I've learned is that when I started walking in my journey with Christ, I noticed that people who I thought were really close to me and really cool with me, they weren't really who God intended to be in my life. So they start to drop, because they weren't understanding, or they weren't very like, they didn't really like, you know, the new me, you know what I'm saying? So I think that it's just really important to really not be of this world and be of God's world. Oh gosh, this world is really in a lot of peril and in a lot of, like, in a very bad state. And it's so important for us to follow God's voice and not the voices of the world, because the voice of the world will lead you to hell, basically, and we don't want to go there. So I just want to say that I think for this week, what I want you guys to do is verses 12 to 16, I want you guys to put yourself in that place. Instead of saying Gideon, say your name. Instead of saying the Midianites, talk about the situation that you're going through, depression. When Gideon talks about how he's the weakest in Manasseh and he's the least of his family, make it personal. Put your life in there. And I think that when you start to meditate on those verses, you'll understand that even though the circumstance that you're dealing with, and you might feel like, well, for example, I'm just Kharissa from Queens, New York, and, you know, I have anxiety and, you know, whatever the case may be, like, oh, I'm really just a nobody. At the end, God says, I will be with you, and you're going to get over your anxiety. You're going to get over, I don't know, your depression. You're going to get over your low self-esteem. God's going to bring you out of that situation. You have to trust him. So I love you guys, and I'll see you all in 2 weeks with part 3. We're going to do Judges chapter 7, okay? Have a blessed 2 weeks, and I hope this helps somebody. Love you guys. Bye.